Welcome to all our Torah Anytime viewers. We're picking up from where we last left off. I want to mention that this is Le'ilei Nishmat Zalman Leib ben Reb Shimon. I'm Zalman Leib ben Reb Shimon. Today is his yahrzeit. It's my father-in-law. And I should only have B'surat Tovot, B'ezrat Hashem. It's his first yahrzeit. He was nifter 13 months ago. Okay, last time, I want to recap where we left off last time, just to give a little bit of, because we didn't finish important nekuda, which I wanted to mention, we ran out of time, I want to give a little bit, last time we were speaking about how a person knows what Gilgul is, and where he came from, what's his Tikun, what's his avodah, what's his obligation in life, what he's supposed to be doing, etc. Okay, that's what we were mentioning. We gave a few simanim, we brought a few stories. If you want to get it, I hope it's up. I know people were complaining it wasn't up for a little while, but now I think it's going up this week. However, now we wanted to speak out as a sniff, as an extension of that idea, something that we need to speak about is the idea of Tzadik v'ralo. The good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, which is spoken about by the Ramban. The Ramban, Nachmanides in Shar HaGemul. The Ramban is a Sefer Torah Adam, which speaks about a lot of different, back then there was no Shulchan Aruch. So he's kind of writing a Shulchan Aruch, especially that has to do with Avelut, with mourning. And he has a section there, which we will be quoting fairly often, especially in these times, of the ideas of the next world and what goes on in the next world. And especially in these Inyanim, he has a richut. And one of the things he speaks about and he spends time on, a number of pages, is on what happened with Eov. With Eov. We all know the story of Eov. Was a great man. He was a man of being. And then, like I said, I ended up the last year with this. I just want to add a few points. He was a man who was a great person, but Hashem said to the Satan, go ahead, you can do with them whatever you want. He's a man who deserves his nisayon. You can do anything you want, but you can't kill him. You can do anything, but you can't kill him, and that's the nisayon that we call the nisayon of Eov. And as we all know, Lo Aleinu, it should never happen such a horrible thing, but he had great children, chashuv children, they all died. He lost his family. He himself became riddled with shchin, with boils that were extremely painful. He was a very, very wealthy man, and he lost all his richness. Chas v'shalom, should never even hear of such things, but there's already an expression, Yisurim Shaliyov. A person's going through Yisurim Shaliyov when a person's going through a difficult time. When you say the Yisurim Shaliyov, it's a very difficult thing to go through. Al Kol Panim, that's what he went through, but he didn't die. Now, during that whole story over there, he also has his friends who try to oded him to make him feel better about his situation. He goes through 4 friends. The first 3 are not successful. They speak about certain ideas of Tzadik v'ralo, which maybe we'll mention soon, but trying to make him understand that good things happen to bad people, or there's a nisyonot and Tikun ador, it comes to fix people up, and this, and there's a nisayon, people go through tribulations, etc. It didn't work. And not only that, they were even taken to task a little bit for trying to make excuses. And the 4th one, Elihu, was the one who was able to make him feel better for the reason I will tell you in a couple minutes. But I have to mention a beautiful, and parenthetically, just mamish parenthetically, but just a beautiful concept I heard. I don't remember who was the one who said this. I heard it Peshem someone. I can't remember the second who it was. But the person asked a very good question. He asked, Eov, the Satan was given full reign to do whatever he wants to Eov. He was allowed to do whatever he wants to Eov. So if he's allowed to do whatever he wants to Eov, why didn't he take away his friends? It says whether his friends in the end of the day made him feel better. He should have made him feel better. He could have taken away everything. He made him all this pain, made him do all this things. So get rid of the friends also. The friends are also making you feel better, so let him get rid of the friends. Let them all get knocked off. He can kill them all, right? Just his whole rule was just don't kill Eov. Eov has to stay alive. That was the whole rule. Good question. That was a great question. But the teretz is even better than the question. You know the answers? He says, from here you see that when you get rid of all of a person's friends, it's called killing him. You see that's called death. A person is a gregarious creature. He's a person who needs to have some type of people that'll help him, coax him on. A person has to have some type of connection with a friend. He has to have a relationship with someone else. When you get rid of those friends, it's ki'ilu the Satan would have killed him. I have to find out. I forget who it was who said this. By next week I'll try to find out. But very beautiful, beautiful yisod that we see from here, that chayim is called having a friend. Chayim, having chiyut. Hopefully it's with the person's spouse, but if not, then it's with a friend, right? At least somewhere along the lines. Okay, but Al-Kapanim, that's what happened with Eov. So that was one very difficult story, of course, as we all know. The whole long, big, one of the Svarim of Tanakh, one of the 10 and 4 Svarim. That's A. And B, the other story is, of course, with Rabbi Akiva, who was a big Tzadik, even before the 40 years. That I already mentioned the end of last year. We'll save it over there. We mentioned last word, even before he met Rachel, we know he's at Tzaniya Ma'alya. The Gemara says he was a big Tzanua, he was a tzaddik, he was a good man, etc. And here we have it that Moshe Rabbeinu saw him and said, you should give Torah through Rabbi Akiva. What are you doing it through me? Look at this person. And he said, what's Achrito? And he showed him Achrito. What happened in the end with Rabbi Akiva? Masreikot shel barzel. He was flayed with boiling hot grates of metal, a very, very painful lo aleinu death. And people don't even know the second half of the midrash, which is even a little bit scarier, is that his meat was actually, they cut up his body and given out his meat. But whatever, that's a harder part of the midrash. So Moshe Rabbeinu asks, is that the way it's supposed to be? A person who's so big in Torah, and that's the schar that a person's supposed to receive. So just so you know, it wasn't asked today or yesterday, or even 70 or 80 years ago, right? When people ask in the question. Of course, we understand with good reason why people would ask, but you should know this is, as we say, an age-old question. It's already a question that dates back to someone big by the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, if you're familiar, right? That's quite a number of few millennia ago. Al-Kapanim, that's what happened. So the direction that the Sifrei Sod, or the Divrei Chen, if you want, those types of Sfarim, a little bit deeper, the Shari Ora and the Ramban also, and others, they speak about in the Ramak and the Shla Kodesh, and if you're familiar, these are Sfarim that speak in a little bit more in intrinsic say. Speak out a very important yesod, which I said very quick last time, is that, and I'm just extending it a little bit. There are two worlds that were created. There's the world of Machshava, how the world was created by Machshava and thought, and how the world was created Lamaisa. Right? The world of Machshava is how Hashem wanted to create the world. Right? The original idea of the world was created with the word Elokim. Right? We know the word Elokim was the original way the world was created, which is the name of Din. And then afterwards he was Me'arbev Rachamim, he put in some Rachamim. It doesn't mean the Din was forgotten, right? What we're speaking about right now. It doesn't mean Din was forgotten. There's Din and Rachamim. It's all mixed together. Both are there together. Just like when you have a child in the stomach of his mother, in the womb, he learns Kol Torah Kula, and then when he's born he forgets it all. So everybody asks the famous question, so why bother? Was it a joke? It's a practical joke. He learns everything and suddenly forgets it all. It's annoying. So the answer is Pashut Me'od, that obviously he doesn't fully forget it, you just have to recap it. How is that person able to learn Torah again? How is the person to get back there again? By having it and then relearning it, he's able to get it all back again. You understand? That's how it works with this idea. Okay, so that's this idea that it once was there and that's it. So too the world was created originally b'din. Allah b'machshava livroto b'din. It was supposed to be b'din, that's the way it was supposed to be. And then he made it be'rachamim, with mercy. So that's what the Swarm asked. So just make it originally with mercy. No, because there's still din connected with the mercy. They work together. And that's what, now, and if we speak it a little bit esoteric again in two words, not that it's a big deal, the original way the world was created was on the highest level, it's called Keter. Keter is a step above of everything. That's above. Keter is the crown that rests on the person. It's not the person itself. That's already way above. We have no relationship to Keter. We don't understand that level of Keter, but it's so high that Keter is din. Keter is the beginning of Tzimtzum, is the beginning of when Hashem Ki'ilu made room for us. You understand? There's no room for us. Hashem is Ki'ilu everywhere. We're not speaking about Hashem is not, it doesn't take place, but there's, in as much as there is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's no room for a universe as big as it is or as small it is. It doesn't make a difference. For an ant, there's no room be'etzem. You understand? But the idea of tzimtzum, there was a certain limitation, and therefore there was made room for us, and that was with din. Din is giving gvulot. Gvulot is boundaries, limitations. He made a little bit of a sphere, and he left room for our universe. That's what it says in the Arizal 500 years ago, before we knew the earth was round, the universe was round, before we knew how big the universe is and how circular it is in the Milky Way, and before we knew how many galaxies were surrounded it, that's all one big circle, but that's how it is. It was a spherical type of tzimtzum that Hashem did with din. So the world starts with din, and now we're in Rachamim. We, us, simple people, us run-of-the-mill simple people, we go with rachamim. We need the rachamim bill. We need things to be easy on us. But the tzaddikim go with the original creation, which is din, which is the difficult one. But of course we know that they get big points upstairs in Shemayim. They go with the original thing. That's what he said. Shtoik. He said to Moshe Rabbeinu, stop asking questions. Shtoik. Be quiet. Meaning quiet, don't talk. In other words, stay in the world of quietness, in the world of Keter, in the higher world where there is no dibur. That's a world that's above. The world of dibur, of discussion, of talking, is a world, our lower worlds. Higher world, shtoik, kach ala lefanei b'machshava. Right? Hashem says, this was my machshava. Hashem doesn't think, right? Hashem doesn't have to think. He doesn't think like we think, right? What it means is, kach ala b'machshava. Rabbi Kiva is in the Olam Haba. He's in the world of machshava, which is in a different sphere. He's already doing on the level of Keter. He's doing everything al pi din. Al pi din, that's why he receives what he receives. It's in a different sphere, which means there's a din. It wasn't just like quiet, we don't understand. We do understand. We understand that we don't understand. It's a different understanding. When people say we don't understand, you're like, okay, stop asking questions. You know, it's like the typical, someone trying to ask questions, and you say, stop asking questions, shut up. You don't tell them that. It's not that. It's not shtoik, we don't want to hear your questions. We heard your question, but it's a different, the answer is esoteric. That is the answer. The machshava is the answer, because he's created in the world of machshava, in the higher worlds. And that's where he is. You understand? In the higher esoteric worlds, and that's why he was discussed in that way. You should know, parenthetically, just stop when it comes to mind. That's one of the answers they say. We know that the Gemara has a debate when the world was created. Was it created in Nisan or in Tishrei? In Tishrei, we celebrate Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei. The world was created in Tishrei. But there's two opinions, as we all know, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, that it was also created in Nisan. What's the answer? Both are correct. No problem. They're both correct. It's very true. Because the world of Machshava, the original world, which was Din, the idea of the world being created, or what we said, Keter is the Ratzon. Keter is before anything physical starts. Only in Chochmah something starts, the next level. Keter is just the want. You can't start anything before you decide you want to do it. Right? The only time you start planning something is you first have to want to do it. Right? And that's what Keter is, and that's what was created in Nisan, the wanting. After the wanting, then we can start discussing plans that was created in Tishrei. The Ma'aseh Bereshit, that was the creation of Tishrei, and that was Nitarbev with a little bit of rachamim. We have a little bit of pity that was done during those days. So it's both correct. Al Kopanim, that's one of the big answers that they say in order to explain Rabbi Kiva and Eov. But the Ramban takes one more connection. Like I said, I'm speaking out to the Ramban over there, who has a long arichut there. It's hard to read him. You should know it's not easy, as we know. The Ramban's hard to read, so I'm just speaking it out bekitzer, just some highlights. And he speaks out there that with Eov and Rabbi Kiva, it also had to do with the idea of sod ibur, what we spoke about before. The idea that it's removed. He says these words: "Ramuz b'divrei Rabbeinu v'nichlal be'inyan sod ibur shechachamim moser motel l'talmidei ha'reuyim." It's only gone to the Talmidim, so I can't tell you guys too much, right? Shehu Chuvat Elihu, and he says that's what Elihu was coming to say, because when you read the Psukim, what Elihu was, his fourth friend of Eov was Elihu. He told him this idea. It's very hard to understand what he meant, and the Ramban explains here and in his Pirush in Eov that what he meant was to tell him the Soda Ibur, which has to do with the Gilgul. He said you're coming back as a Gilgul, and that's why this had to happen to you. And yet, because he was upset, there was a Yesh Tzadik. I know for a fact I didn't do anything wrong. Incredible thing to be, an incredible statement. I have no chet, and he says no, but it had to do with the Sod of the Gilgul. Rabbeinu Bechaya also brings the same idea. He brings the same idea in two places, in Kad v'Kemach and also in Gimel Chavav, in Dvarim. In Gimel Chavav, the Rabbeinu Bechaya says these words, very interesting. When Moshe Rabbeinu says that Hashem got upset at me, Moshe Rabbeinu is giving rebuke to Bnei Israel. He says, "Vayitaber bi lema'anchem," right? Which literally means Hashem got upset at me because of you, right? So different people sounds not so tactful, you know. I'm really okay, and it's all your fault. It's all your fault, right? Sounds like what your kids do when they fight, right? It's all your fault. Abba got mad at me because of you, right? So where does that come from? So the Rosh Hashanah is a pshat, a very nice pshat. But the Rabbeinu Bechaya says, "V'yitaber bi lemanchem." It doesn't say imi. He got mad at me, imi, with me. It says be in me. What's in me? Be. So he says, what's the first word? Vayit aber. Ibur, Lashon Ibur, pregnancy, which is what we spoke about. Ibur, Soda Ibur. He says it has to do with Soda Ibur. That because of you, I am now in Soda Ibur. Moshe Rabbeinu said, in every generation, I'm going to come back as a quasi Gilgul, Kebiyachol, to the Soda Ibur, to Klal Yisrael. I'm there in order to be the nitzut shel, he says, the ibur she nitzut shel Moshe nimtza bechol dor bekirbeinu beibur letaket etchem. I'm always, I don't know if that's good for him or bad, it's great for us. Right? We got a good. I don't know, I can't tell you if that's such a pleasant thing for him, because I'm sure he's sitting in Kisei Kavod over there enjoying himself. But a little bit of nitzutz, we have a little bit of nitzutz of Moshe Rabbeinu with us all the time, that keeps us, as we say, connected. That keeps us always, that we have a little bit of our Moshe Rabbeinu, that keeps us always there. And that's what it brings in the Shar Gilgulim, which is the Arizal. He has to say for Shar Gilgulim, Perek Tet. In the end of Perek Tet, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgul of Terach. He was a Gilgul of Terach. Terach, of course, we know, was Avram Avinu's father. The Terach Lamaaseh was Chozer b'tshuva, so he was okay. He got a chelik in Olam Haba. He was Chozer b'tshuva, Baruch Hashem. Like many cases these days, the son brought back the father to the way things are supposed to be. You understand? But here we have Avram Avinu. But don't forget, but he had a good piece of his life. Terach had a good piece of his life, many years of his life, where he was selling idols. That was his business. Idolatry was his game. You know what I'm saying? Avram Avinu grew up with what do you call those feather cleaning things, right? And he was always polishing off idols. He was always cleaning off idols. That's what he had to grow up seeing his tati doing all the time. Not exciting, right? But that's that he spent his life. He was selling it. He was willing to chuck his son in a fire because of it. In the end of the day, okay, he found his way. In the end of the day, he found his way. But even for that, we mentioned, even a person who, in the beginning of his life, sometimes you need a Gilgul for the original part of his life, even if he's Chozer b'tshuva. And the person who's Chozer b'tshuva, he goes to Olam Haba, it's fine. But there's a certain Gilgul that had to be required, and Terach was Nidgalgel into Moshe Rabbeinu to give us the Torah. That was his kapara. The giving of the Torah was a kapara for Terach, who of course is the beginning of Avram Avinu, and that's why it had to be. Yeah?
The interesting thing about Terach is that he's the father of all of the Avot, and all of the Imot, and all of his sons.
Why the Imot? 1 second, why the Imot?
Because all of the Imot came from Terach also.
You're saying because Sarah was, yeah,
and Rivka came from.
Rivka was from Betuel, which is also from the same family. Yeah, that's funny. It's cute. Think about the Imot. No, I knew the fathers. I didn't have the mothers.
All three of his sons became part of the Jewish people.
Well, one died. Yeah.
Right, but he was the father of Sarah.
He was the father of Sarah. You're saying he still had some thing.
And Lot, which is where part of Mashiach.
Yeah, that's what we say in the Haggadah. We started off with Terach. We started off with the Avodah Zarah. That's how we started. Very good. Very nice one.
So was Terach part of Moshe Rabbeinu?
He became so the Ibur of Moshe Rabbeinu, which means at the time of birth he came into it. It doesn't mean he was the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. He, as we say, kind of latched on. He had a little latch onto the thing that he was able to connect onto it. That's a big chiddush of the Arizal. No, nobody can say this to the Arizal. He's the one who knew these things. But Al-Kupanim, okay, very good. As Ron is adding, that we see this koach of Terach, that he had this thing. But Moshe Rabbeinu, at least we have a certain, appeasement, that we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, we got a nitzitz of Moshe Rabbeinu with us all the time, and that's what's keeping us connected. That's what keeps us alive. Al-Kupanim, but that is what the Ramban says, is what the answer was to Eov. He brings that the idea of Tzadik Virali was coming to tell us, look, there are a lot of reasons. Like I told you, many reasons why Lo Aleinu people have to go through is, first of all, Nisayon. People have to go through, sometimes Yisurim Shel Ava, pain through Ava, because we have such a good relationship, you have to have Ava. Sometimes it's for the kapara, sometimes Tzadikim have it because of the kapara out of the door. They have to have an atonement for the whole generation. Sometimes they even die just to atone for the whole generation. The more classic answer, of course, is he gives us the difficulties in this world so we'll have a much better life in the next world, which we spoke about a couple shiurim ago, 2 or 3 shiurim ago. And here we have another reason, which is, of course, harder to follow, to know. The Cheshbonot, the Arizal knew them, but we don't know them, is Soda Yibur, because a lot of times it comes from a place of a Gilgul, of a certain thing, and that's how it is. Al pi the machshava of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's in the higher worlds, in the world of Keter, in the world of Chachma, and we can't always know where it comes from. The Minchat Yehuda is Rav Yehuda Fataya. Rav Yehuda Fataya, he adds an interesting piece here, not typical of him. Over there he talks about a lot of Gilgulim and this. He's talking about, here he is, throws off, if you want to look on page 188 over there, He brings, I want to tell you that I deal with a lot of people chozrim b'tshuva. Now, Rav Yehuda V'tai died in 55. The chozrim b'tshuva was in I thought the 60s, 70s, maybe the 80s, like, so here he is. In the 40s and the 50s, he also had this chazara b'tshuva. And he writes over there, harba neshim shechozrim b'tshuva. And suddenly they find that they're going through very difficult times. Lo hayeh lehem be'avar. I didn't have it in the past. They even said when I was a Rasha, it was easier. I didn't have all these difficulties, financial, difficulties with children, difficulties with my health situation, etc. And suddenly when I'm Chozer b'tshuva, what is this that happened? Rav Yehuda V'tai, the Mekubal of Mekubalim, the one who knows everything, he says, the answer is that when a person is in the middle of being a Rasha, or he's in a bad situation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Mishalem pri amalo be'olam hazeh be'osher u'be'briut. He gives it all to you in this world. He pays it to Meshalem lesonav al panav la'avido lo yacher lesonav al panav yishalem lo. Hashem pays him everything in this world. He pays him off in order to finish him off, and then in the next world he comes back. At Tzadik, over here you're going, like we said, to the Olam Haba. We're not Rabbi Akiva. I don't know if I should say yes Baruch Hashem or not Baruch Hashem. I'm not sure what to say exactly, because I don't think we want it, but we do want it, but we don't want it. Yeah, we're not that high. But the closer you are to that other world, the Olam of Machshava, the Olam of Kachala b'Machshava, the Olam of Din. And therefore things are a little bit more meticulous with us. They leave it to be a little bit different. Yeah, so that's why it's a little bit quiet. Now he adds a little bit of a kanech, and that's why he's bringing it in. He adds also, first of all, he brings the Gemara in Kedushin. Mar imla, the Gemara in Kedushin says this, that a person who does tshuva and he becomes so close to Hashem, mar imla, he gets difficulties. V'dome kamisha sarf et kol Torah kula. He does a little bit thing, and it's as if he burnt the Sefer Torah. He gets whopped. He gets whopped across the face. Lo sher mimeno afilu atachat. Sometimes he can really get punished severely because of his high level. Yeah, and and that's what he brings. And he mentions. And in addition, sometimes when you're in such a level, you have to do a full cleaning job. If you leave over a ketem, he says when you do an avon, when you do a sin, sometimes it'll leave over a little bit of a stain. So if you leave over those stains, it stands out, right? When you're wearing a clean suit, so when you have a little stain here and there, then it stands out, right? Just like right now I was walking out of the house, right? My wife said, one second. Why? I thought, must be have a clean suit, right? Not like these schleppers who go, then you don't even know, like, where do you start, right? When someone's a mess, you don't even know where to start cleaning the thing. Right? So the more cleaner we are, the more we need a little bit of a cleansing process. So he says because of that, sometimes we have to go ahead and do a kapara for the old chata'im. Now over here he brings a machlokah, which I'm not going to get too much into, but he brings how many fasts you have to do. He starts being, when you start, the one difficult part, learning Kabbalah could be fun, but the hard part of learning Kabbalah is they're really into fasting. And you're like, okay, I'll just skip this part. You just turn the pages. Right? They're really into the fasts. Because one fast, you need this many fasts. For Chas Hashem, we mentioned it in the Gehenim Shurim, and the Shurim of Gehenim, but a person could need sometimes a good number of fasts for for certain small sins, you understand? And he brings a machloket. Some people say you need one fast. When a person's Chozer b'tshuva, do one good fast, and that'll be mechaper. Some people say 3, some people say for each chet. Oh, man, that one don't talk to me about, right? That's a hard one. And he brings, he brings from the Ben Ish Chai, he brings Rav Yosef Chaim from Baghdad. He quotes Rav Yosef Chaim from Baghdad. Shlita Zichron Levracha, because it was nifter, he was passed away not long ago. So over there he says that you can give tzedakah. Baruch Hashem, right? It says you can give it tzedakah as a kapara for all that you did. But guess what? Like I said, don't read the Minchat Yehuda too much, because over there he argues with him. He says, Ma pitom, you think tzedakah compares to fasting? You have to go through the inu, you have to go through the pain of the nefesh. You have to go the pain of the fast in order to get the proper kapara. And the tzedakah doesn't do the job, even though, sometimes it could be. If you give a nice amount of money, then maybe it could be as a replacement for a ta'anit. It could be a replacement for a ta'anit, but it has to be a considerable amount of money. That's Ma'am Loez on Lachish 23, right? Is that the address? Make your checks payable in cash money,
you
right?
Calculate how much you might go back to the fasting.
You have to, exactly. Okay, I'll take the fasting. Forget it, right? It's exactly the point. Exactly. But al kopanim, it's one or the other. Okay, but that's what you do, that you serve to be mitaher. But al kopanim, that's what he says. When a person gets to that stage, he has to do a good cleansing job. So you have to try to make sure to do your best. Okay, that's what he says, and that's the yesod that he brings down to this to this concept. I just want to finish this Nakuda with mentioning, people hear these shurim or these ideas, these concepts, and some people say, why is it relevant? Why is it not relevant? Do I really have to know cheshbonot, with cheshbonot or not? So I want to mention an important point that the Ramban himself, and this I'm concluding the Ramban there, mentions. The Ramban himself mentions this idea. An old, very old machloket, a long, old-time disagreement about what kind of amuna is better. There's two different types of amuna. There's something called amuna pshuta, the simple amuna, and there's something called amuna bechakira, be'iyun, amuna that comes through introspection, through looking into the facts, through understanding, through making calculations, correct? That's a very, very old machloket that came for many things. The Kavod Levavot starts his whole sefer in the Hagdama, his whole piece called Yichud Hashem, which philosophically proves the existence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Some people say it's better not to learn it. We're not philosophers. We don't understand it. We get confused. Some people dafka say to skip it. But in the Hagdama he says that you have to use your brain to be able to figure it out well. Don't let it be stam by Kabbalah, just by receiving it. You should have the Kabbalah and also the Sechel Yachad. You should use your Sechel. Rabbeinu Bechaya, he speaks about this in detail, you should know, in Dvarim Yud Gimel Zayin. It's a nice marmokim if you want to look it up. And over there he brings on that pasuk, the pasuk he learns from the pasuk. It says over there, Asher lo yadata, atav avotecha. He says there's two types of, there's Asher lo yadata that comes from amuna on my own, and he brings atav avotecha that comes from your fathers. And he writes over there, a Kabbalah from your forefathers is good, and it's very important, but it's not always complete to get everything by your forefathers. And he says it's similar to a blind person being led by someone who can see, that you feel rest assured that everything's okay, because we know that the guy leading me is okay. But there's still a certain insecurity. The less you can see, the more insecure you are. Your person wants to wear his glasses. You understand? It's not always as comfortable. I don't have that bad vision. I used to. I did a certain laser vision to my things. So I have 2 or 3. So I could really kind of go without my glasses. You understand? I could do this. You understand? I might turn the other way around. But I can really, some go without my glasses. But why, when I go out and walk outside, do I put on my glasses, even though sometimes it's probably better not to be wearing my glasses? Well, right, as we all know. But the reason why you put on your glasses is why? Because there's a certain security that I can see. You just want to feel more secure. You feel more batuach about it, that I can now see, that I'm now sure of where I'm going. So also a person led by a person who can see, you know you're okay. You have that walk dog. The person has the walk dog. He knows he's okay. But he's not for sure. And it can lead to danger. It's good to have the Kabbalah, but it can lead to danger. As opposed to when a person does it through chakira, when a person does it through introspection, when he introspects into what he has to learn, when he learns it be'iyun, and he understands he does. So back then, it was philosophy. These days, I don't know if the philosophy thing flips so much. You know, they always say, if you want to see a bunch of guys hanging out in a bar, and you do this, so you come with a more nevuchim, the guy to perplex the Rabbim says, I know what your questions are, don't worry, I have it all. Here, guys, this is the problem. This is not going to work. We all know, okay, the Gisha, the approach these days is a little bit different than it was back then. So now we prove it a lot through science, and this, scientifically, everything can be proven in a jiffy. Everything. It's incredible how it's almost hard to understand how there is another side. I can't even understand how there is another side. The whole atheism thing is almost close to absurdity, absolute absurdity. But when you have the proofs through understanding, so that's through chakira, that's through introspection, and that's a different level. You're on a different dargah. You understand? That's on a different level, and that's why it's so much better. You understand? And that's what he says. There's through understanding, but there's through looking into it and getting into it better. And the answer to Ba is, they say both are important. You need to have the ogen, the anchor. The anchor is a Kabbalah from Sinai. We have from Moshe Rabbeinu, from our Avos, HaKadoshim, from our fathers. Our fathers would never lie to us, etc. A direct connection. We have 22 generations. We know exactly who and what and how, and the details, non-changing details, everything is there. And after that, we also have the introspection to be able to prove. He says, Dam al Hashiv, you have to know what to answer. You have to know what to answer. The pasuk says you have to know what to answer to speak to people. You have to be able to know what to do, because otherwise it can get dangerous. Now, unfortunately, one of the times this is a good raya, proof to this, was the mashal in the Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition, in some ways, was an impressive show, but yes, we have to admit, in some ways it wasn't so impressive. That's the truth. Because there were a lot that fell between the cracks. They did not want to leave. There were people that were in good regal positions. They were Jewish. just because they didn't know much. Yes, it was the Sfaradim, it was us, the Sfaradim, and yes, we didn't hold strong in all the situations. There were a good number of people that ended up falling and getting lost. We know the Maranos, but even with the Maranos or without, they were hiding away, and they weren't willing to give up what they had, or give up. It was dangerous also. It wasn't just money, it was dangerous. Many people died when they were left. They left with the clothes on their back, and they didn't get a free El Al trip to Israel or something like that. You understand? We're dealing with that to go in the middle of the sea, and many people drowned, got lost at sea. It wasn't a simple thing, and we well understood why it happened. But one of the reasons they attributed is because over there it was more of an emuna pshuta. Yes, and us Sephardim are very good at that. It was a little bit more of an emuna, just people knew, and there was a Kabbalah, and that's why there were some people that got lost by the wayside, as opposed to the people who had it in their kishkas, as they say. They had it integrated. They were the ones who were able to make it through. Obviously, another example would be in the Holocaust, a very similar idea, etc., etc. From here we just see that sometimes it's good to learn these things. We've been going and giving a series on the Yud Gimel Ikrim, on the 13 Ikrim, but also these ideas, and sometimes to learn how these cheshbonot happen, the tzaddik v'ra'alo, the good and the bad. We can't know all the details, but to know a little bit of a direction, where it comes from, is very important. That's why we're doing these ideas about the Gilgulim. Okay? I finished that off just because the Ramban himself concludes with these words, so I decided to mention it. Seder? Okay, now we're going to move on to the next step over here. And we're finishing up Gilgulim right now with one more Nakuda. Now this is a little bit detailed, I'm just going to do this fairly quick. But there's a list of different Avirot, which is brought in the Arizal, or in the Ramak, the Shla, and other places. They bring different types, even the Sefer Hasidim has a few, the Sefer Charedim has a few places, about what Avera causes what Gilgulim. What Avera can cause what type of Gilgul, what the person's going to come back as. Okay, there's a whole long list. I'm not going to get into it because it'll get a little bit meticulous, a little bit too detailed, but I just want to give a few so we can be able to see how it's a little bit connected. First of all, they say someone who causes other people to eat ma'achalot asurot. He causes other people. Unfortunately, we have many of these people. Fake echsherim, are people who hold the echsher and they don't do the real thing. So it says, midgalgel be'aleh shel ilan. He turns into a leaf. He turns into a leaf. And he says this is Lashon ale navel. Ale navel is a rotting leaf. So navel is nevela, because the guy was feeding nevelot to other people, right? Like we know a few ma'asim that happen, unfortunately, in America and other places. And he turns into a leaf, which every time it moves in the wind, that's why also when you see a move in the wind, it's painful for him. He gets moved around, and he goes back and forth in the wind. It's a painful experience until eventually he falls onto the floor. Until eventually the leaf falls on the floor, and that's his karet. That's what he's chayav karet. The bash that he falls on the floor, even though he kind of does it like this, but the falling on the floor is apparently some type of painful experience, which it can cause him to help him make some type of tikkun. Because some people were asking, how do you get a tikkun when you're just not a movable thing? You're a leaf. How do you get it? So that's one of the ways to do it. Someone who speaks consistently Lashon Hara, someone who always speaks Lashon Hara, Lo aleinu chas v'shalom, turns into a rock. A rock. Why a rock? Because a rock doesn't speak any Lashon Hara, right? Not that I know about. He just stays quiet. That's what he says. He doesn't have a peh. Evan shaket tamid. He always stays quiet as a rock. It's even more painful. You can't even talk. Can you imagine? A very painful experience. A rotzeach, someone who killed someone else in some type of lethal way. He says he turns into water. Why water? Because every time water pounds another water, flowing water, he says, Dafka, in a flowing water, every time he gets bashed over the head, it's painful, and it gets hurt. He gets hit again. He gets keeping hit on the floor. He keeps getting hit by the thing. These are things you would have never thought about, right? That's why I wanted to mention a few of them. Very interesting. Someone who lo aleinu had relations with an eshatish, with a married woman, he turns into a chamor. He turns into a donkey. Lashon chomer, from physicality. The Ramak says he turns into a dog. And the Ramak actually brings a real story that he knew. These people knew who the Gilgulim were. I'm not sure how they were able to figure it out, but he knew of a person who was a noef. He committed adultery with a woman. He died, and he turned into a dog. Now, the dog, for some reason, decided to go to the woman that he had this illicit relationship with and kill her. He attacked her and he killed the woman. He ended up killing the woman. But at the same time that he was killing the woman, the son, who was a mamzer from this woman, who was a mamzer as an illicit child, saw his mother get killed by the dog, and he immediately took a knife and killed the dog on the spot. This is what Ramak brings, or Moshe Cordova, who was the generation before the Arizal. he said that he was able to kill the dog, and then not soon afterwards, the son himself also ended up dying. So it wasn't such a good phenomenon over here. It's not something recommended. Okay, it's the Torah. If it's not enough, the Torah says it. So you say these stories at least so people understand that it's not good to do. Well, Kapani, that was a pretty gory experience. But at least when you see events like this, you see that there's something a little bit more behind the scenes. There's something else a little bit more behind it. Okay. He brings a list of different people who did things, having illicit types of relationships with a Nidda, a woman who's a Nidda, who's having a mental, who's not tahora. He says that the person turns into a Goyish, a woman. You hear that? You turn into a Goy woman. Someone who has illicit relationships with a Goy, so he himself turns into or a Goy or a dog. That's up either Zohar or in the Shar Ruach HaKodesh, that's a Rizal also. Okay, it's an interesting one. A person who looks on a constant basis, of course people have to be careful, but we all know, on a constant basis at things that are usher to look at, arayot and things like that, he turns into, you'll never guess, an owl. Why an owl? Because an owl in Hebrew is called a ra'ah. A ra'ah, he turns into a ra'ah, which is that? Yeah, he turns into ra'ah. Anyways, that's, he brings, like I said, he brings a bunch. I'm not going to get too overdone here. You guys don't want to hear the whole list anyways. It doesn't sound so exciting. So the Minchat Yehuda, Rav Yehuda Fataya brings that he one time saw a goat, and he knew who this person was, and he said, "Oh, I see the goat. I know who that person was." He knew that was a person who was a Gilgul of a person that had relationship with his wife with a light on, with the or on. As we all know, the halacha is the person's not supposed to have a light on in the room. If it's in a different room, it's okay. It shouldn't be directly on top of them. But in the room itself, the light is meant to be covered. Ask a local Orthodox Rav about your specific situation. Everything has its questions and not. Okay, but in Shulchan Aruch, in 7 Reish Mem, that's what's written. The Ramak brings in Shir Korma that there was once a Gaon. One of the Gaonim was called Rav Yosef Dilraina. Rav Yosef Dilraina. We never heard of these Gaonim. The Gaonim, just to get a historical basis clear, is we all know there was the Tanaim who wrote the Mishnayot. The Amoraim wrote the Gemarot. That was in the year 400. Okay, and after that there was the Rabban Tzavarai, and then the Gaonim lived until the thousands. From the thousands till the 1400s, this is Laminyanam, we had the Rishonim, and then from the 1500s we have the Achronim with the Beit Yosef, in other words, which is the Achronim, which is the latter things. So the Gaonim lived before the Rishonim. We have Rav Hai Gaon, Rav Sadia Gaon, Rav Shuri Gaon, we have big Gaonim, with a tremendous amount of information that we have from them. They were very meticulous in what they did. So there was a person who was also a Gaon, he was a big person, there was Rav Yosef Dilraina, which we have nothing about him, except we know he was a Gaon, and the problem was, like Acher, he went off the derech. He went off, Lagamri, Yatzale Tarbu Torah. He went off the derech, which of course is a very bad thing. So the Arizal brings down that one time he saw a black dog passing by. He was walking with his Talmidim. There was a black dog walking. He said, "Oh, there's Rav Yosef Telaraina. There's Rav Yosef Telaraina. You knew that was there." He's still around. And the Arizal was 500 years after the Gaonim. Okay, the Arizal was in the 1500s, and this person was in the 900s. You understand? So we're talking about 550 years afterwards. And he told us his Talmidim that you should know, that's Yosef Telaraina still hasn't gotten his kapara. No, don't come next to me. You stay away. He was looking to try to get his kapara from the Arizal. And he didn't get it. These people had eyes. Like, it's a beautiful thing to be able to see things. It's probably a very scary world to live in the world of the Arizal, because he's not much able to see things. One last one I'll mention, just because it has also he says a person who shaves his peyot, who takes his peyot off, it turns into a cow. Because peyat roshchem, lo takifu peyat roshechem, is not gematria, is the Rasha Tevot of par. Okay? And that's what it was. They bring a whole Maisa there. Arizal brings a whole Maisa there of a person that he was going to Mitzrayim. So the Arizal gave him a bracha to go to Mitzrayim. And he said, on your way back, you should pay attention, because there's something very important you have to take care of. He had no idea what he was talking about. But what happened was, he got to Mitzrayim, he finished what he was doing over there, and he was going back through the desert, back to Israel, Eretz Israel, through the desert with a shayara. People always traveled with caravans. What happened was, he slept one night, and he overslept. And I don't know why they did this time, it wasn't so nice, and they left him. Right? The poor guy overslept. He woke up, and suddenly nobody's there. Everybody's gone. And in the middle of the desert, in the Sahara desert, not the Sahara desert, but in the middle of the Sinai desert, sorry, right? The Sahara is even worse, right? In the Sinai desert, with no one around, He barely had a small canteen of water. The man was in panic. He didn't know what to do. He started walking. He started running. He was looking around. What am I going to do? He was in pachad, without anything. And he started running until suddenly he saw a person in the distance. Oh, he was so excited, Baruch Hashem. He saw a person plowing he's in the old desert, plowing with his shore, with his ox. He's on the floor, he's hitting the ox. So he came up to him and said, what's going on? And he started looking and realized that the guy was hitting him, and then suddenly the ox turned into a man, and the man turned into an ox, and he started hitting him, and then it went back again, and each one started hitting him. He said, oh, one second. Now, he's living in the time of the Arizal. He said, nah, these are ruchot, these are spirits, these are not things. He started watching to see what he have to do, and the people said to him, they begged him, can you please help us? We have to get out of this. We have ruchot. We used to shave our peyot all the time. We used to shave our peyot for the looks. We tried to make ourselves look good. So they shaved their peyot on the sides. They used to shave, and now we're punished by being an ox, a par. Like I said, a par, an ox, the same thing. Peyot Roshachem, 1 second. So he said, if you can help us and take us to the Arizal, and he said, and so they made a deal. He said, you get me out of this desert. He let him in. They showed him the way, or they took him out to whatever it is. And he went to the Ari, and the Ari told him that he said, no, you're the one who has to do the kapara for them. He told him, this is what you have to fast. This is what you have to do. I guess it was worth it to fast this time. For that, he said, this is what you have to do. And in order to do a tikun, he told him what tikunim he has to say. He said, you saw them, you have to do the tikunim. And the Arizal taught him what tikunim he had to do, and he was able to help these two people. Sorry? Say again?
What is she?
The shir, the halacha, in Be'ezrat Hashem, we plan on speaking about it, you should know, after Pesach. But from here until behind here, the whole over here, okay? There is a little bit of a question behind ears about what people use, but yeah, as we all know, till here, till the bone, okay? The person has to be careful not to do it. And even if he cuts it, you're allowed to cut it, but it has to always have at least 2 millimeters, 4. Okay, number 2 on the cutting. They always say, many people have already asked, and it's true. You should know. Stop. I don't know about it in America, but at least here in Israel, it really, just like there's a hechsher in a restaurant, there really should be a hechsher in a barber. It really is not so simple to be able to go. You should go to some barber with the Yerushalayim, because it is not pasha, because they're willing to do whatever you tell them to do, and people don't chap. So there really should be some type of kashrut on a barber, because yes, unfortunately, as we all know, barber is a job that sometimes younger people do, teenagers or this, or just learning the trade, and they do it, and sometimes it can be very dangerous. So a person has to be careful about that. Okay, and there was another mice over there with the Arizal, that there was a orev, a crow that came down, that said there's a crow that came down, and he came down to he flew away, and he told the Arizal, shoot away the crow, and he said, Lech Rasha ubrach lecha, go away, you Rasha, run away. I'm not going to fix you up. V'tekef parach ve'alach ze ha'orev. That's what it says in Shir Koma. He did, and he told him this person was a person who 100 years ago used to be a tax collector, but he was a big Rasha. He used to collect money, especially from poor people. He used to take advantage of them. He had no rachmanut, and in order to get the Kavod and the extra money to be able to be wealthy and all that, he used to do. And now he's still megulgal a couple hundred years later as a crow which is of course known as the cruel bird. He's considered a cruel bird, of course, so that's why he was megulgal into a bird. One last one which I'll mention is a very serious one. This one you do have to know. This one is very serious. A big Gilgul, and this is something we all have to be extremely careful for. Now, he says about someone who steals money. Now, obviously, stealing money is also enlisted in that. I don't think anyone here is hijacking banks, okay? But one of the big problems is, yes, sometimes if we borrow money and don't pay it back, it's the most difficult and dangerous Gilgul that is around, okay? Because unfortunately, we can all be succumbed. I know there are many people that don't want to ever borrow money because chas shalom they can forget, and it's a serious event. And we all know that sometimes you borrow a few shekel from someone, you forget to pay it back. So yes, it is a very scary Gilgul. That's the truth, okay? Until you can actually pay it back, it's not so simple. The Vilna Gaon brings in Mishle Yudalit Chafei. He talks about in the pasuk of how to be mitaken a Gilgul by trying to return the money for him, okay? And it's something that can happen. There are many stories about this. Now, the big thing that the Gra says over the Vilna Gaon, which I don't enjoy reading it, to be honest with you, is he says, and I don't know if so many people know this, but it's not only the person who stole the money, or if I could say borrowed the money, but it's also the person that was stolen from. Now, I know people are going to hear them and say, that's not really fair. As we all know, that's not really fair. Obviously, that probably means someone's got to be mochel eventually, or some type of mechila, famous ma'asim with the Chofetz Chaim, when he was stolen from, he chased after the Gadim and said, I'm Okel, don't worry about it, right? Because he knew this idea of the Vilna Gaon, which is not so simple, that even then, because the Tikun comes through the fact that the Gadim has to come back to the Nignav and pay him back. So how's it going to happen? Through some Gilgul. We're going to have to come in through two different types of lives in order for it to come back, in order for it to happen. The Sefer Charedim brings this also. The Sefer Charedim brings this, and he says it's only if you're mamish makpid gamur that he has to return the money and this, and it's not so simple. They do bring down that through Yorshim, and this is very relevant. I'm speaking about it just recently with someone, a relative, that didn't get paid back a decent amount of money, and they even wrote down, the relative even wrote down to the person in a very evil, not evil, no, chas shalom. He was very mad. I don't blame him. I was to be upset. No, a very strong letter, but he wrote to him, I'm not going to be mochel you, and in Shamayim I'm going to get you, and he wrote very strong things, which can be very, very scary. You understand? That's not pashut. It's something that can lead to coming back in order to do it, and they bring down, that's what they bring down, this idea. A person goes through chibut kever, he goes through rima b'tolah, he goes through all the things, he's ready to go in, and here he is, he goes, oh, 1 second, sorry, we forgot something, sorry, you have to go back again. Right? It's not very pleasant, that's what he says, the gates are locked here, it's not very enjoyable after all that to start all over again, you understand, because the person has to go as a Gilgul. I mentioned 2 weeks ago a story, maybe it was last week even, a story from the number 2 bus. Like I told you, there were many stories with the number 2 bus that was exploded 15 years ago in Yerushalayim, the number 2 bus. Many big tzaddikim were there. Another person who was there, besides the story I mentioned last week, is a person by the name of Rav Segel. His name was Rav Segel, who was a Rebbe, an 8th grade Rebbe. Okay, he was on that bus, and yes, he was niftar. He was niftar on that bus. After the Shiva and after the month, approximately after a month or two, he came in a dream to his wife. He came to a dream to his wife. He didn't have the zchut to talk. I don't know exactly the situation. He wasn't able to talk, but he picked up a petek. He picked up a paper that said on it wine. It said on it wine, W-E-I-N. Okay, or I'm saying in English, I'm sure it was in Hebrew. Okay, fine, whatever, how you pronounce it. And it said 14, 5 equals 14. That's what it said, 5 equals 14. Nobody knew what he was talking about. Nobody understood it. Obviously, they saw it, and they saw it even once or twice. They said, we have to figure this out. It's a true story that's documented. And they tried again, they were figuring it out. Finally, after a lot of introspection, they checked into his Talmidim, and then they remember, but after a lot of checking it out, they found that he had a Talmud by the name of Wine, who was already an adult. This is already going back 15, 20 years. He was an adult, and he was his eighth grade teacher. Okay, he's already married with a couple kids. I think this Wine kid or something like that. And he said to him, was there any? He said, I don't remember this. And then he tried to remember. And then he remembered in 8th grade we went on a school trip, and the Rebbe didn't have change. So I gave him 10 liras, and he was supposed to give me back 5 liras, dating it back, by the way. Right? We see we're going back to the liras. He gave me back 5 liras, and they figured out, and they checked the math, 5 liras equals 14 shekel. 5 liras equals 14 shekel. So they gave the kid back, I hope they gave him more than 14 shekel, maybe they weren't allowed to, but they gave back 14 shekel. They gave back 14 shekel to the kid, and that was the kapara. They realized that was the story. That was one story, and there's another one. I have a picture of the letter in a book that I have. There's a picture of the actual letter of this written. That a woman, her name was Rebbetzin Devlinger. That's her name. She died a sudden death. She was a little bit older, but she died a sudden death. They were taken by surprise. And she showed up to her sister in a dream. Also, she showed up to her sister in a dream, and she had this chus talk, and she said, please give to Brunin, the sons of Brunin, who was also, he already passed away also, who owned the Makolet, 560 shekel. 560 shekel. The daughter, the sister who saw this in the dream, started running away in the dream, and she woke up in a cool sweat. She was like, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her sister, she hadn't seen it in I don't know how long, and she was, her dead, it's not so comfortable to see dead people in dreams, right? As you can understand. She was taken aback. She was taken aback, and she ran away. But she wanted to forget about it. After a day or two, she said, I have to figure it out. So she decided to go to the Makolet, to the store, to find out. And she asked, the son of the owner of the shop took over the shop or whatever, And she said, does my sister own that? They started checking up in the books. He's checked up the books, the credit books, and he said, yeah, your sister owned 560 shekel. That's what it says over here. I would have forgotten about it. It was in the book, an old book, but it says your sister apparently owns 560 shekel. She was like in awe, because she said 560 shekel. She obviously paid her the 560 shekel, and they have a letter written from both the Baal Makolit and from the sister, who both were of recognition of this Maisa that occurred. But we see from here that these are real things that happen, and like I said, this is one of the more dangerous ones. The Shomer Munim brings another Gilgul, another tier of a Gilgul, and this is really the last one. I keep thinking it's the last one, but this is really the last one. Who brings a Maisa, he brings a Truma. The Shomer Munim is a Rishon. Okay, there's two Shomer Munims. There's one, this is from the previous one, that brings, it's a Sefer Kabbali a little bit, but he brings this Maisa. They were a few people traveling in a field, going through a field, and they heard in an outhouse, in some house on the side, it was a rundown house or whatever it is, they heard some screaming from inside, like a woman being attacked, or they didn't know what was going on. They said, we're going to go. A few strong men, they said, we'll go and take care of the guy, we'll finish him off. Right? So they got off on the thing, and they started going into the house, they banged down the door to go see, the woman screaming at the top of her lungs, and they saw a woman lying down there, and a young woman lying down there, and an older woman taking, and there's around the younger woman is fire all over surrounding her, and the older woman is taking clothing from the fire and putting it on the younger woman. She's taking burning hot clothing on the fire and putting it on the younger woman, and she's doing it again, and then the whole thing recaps again, and then they're going. So people are like in fear. I don't care how big their muscles were. They were scared out of their mind, and they ran out of the house. And they heard screaming, saying, "Come back! Come back! Help me! Help me!" Right? They heard them saying, "Yehudim, Yehudim, come and help me!" This is what they brought down. Tamu Sharo. After they saw this thing, Malbisha Tzeirah. The Vinu and the Shomer Munim says that the pshat was, and everybody understood it was. This is a mother with her daughter, that she was not makpid on her daughter wearing tsanua clothing. Everybody, again, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. I don't want to make a klalim of everything, right? But obviously we have to try to be makpid. A person doesn't get punished for all the chinuch if it's out of his control and the chinuch is not there. So like I said, you have to make sure to check with the chinuch aspects, but she was not being mechanech her daughter to dress properly, so her kapara was this Gilgulim. I'm just quoting Sfarim, I'm not making anything up. Okay, I'm just quoting, don't blame me for anything here. Okay, and they said, and then they came back afterwards when they found out what this was on the Shomer Munim. They came back, and guess what? Nothing was there. There was no house there. There was no person there. Nothing was there. But al Koparim, we see from here this idea, the idea Gilgulim, the Amiti, and it's a kapara, and that's why we have to try to be as meticulous as we can. We do our best. That's what we have to know, that we try to do our best, because unfortunately it's something that comes back. This concludes the idea of the Gilgulim. The sniff, which will be the next section we'll speak about next week, which is the next speaking about is a little bit more things we might have heard about. We're going to speak about now dibukim, the dibuk. Okay, the dibuk, which I think we've heard a lot of stories about. We'll quote a couple of them. We'll read inside a few of them. But the dibukim is something that we actually have seen in this world. Okay, it's not just people coming in dreams and people testifying in this, which is also, I've given you pretty accurate testimonies. I think they're pretty coming from people Ne'eman and etc. But al kaparim, the dibukim are things that have mamish been around by many people, have seen it, people being possessed. Now the difference between a dibuk and a gilgul is, like I told you, a gilgul comes to a person when he's born, or as part of his neshama, or at the time of birth as a latching on to his neshama. That's what a gilgul is. Okay, and that, like we said, sometimes it's a kapara, and this, the dibuk is coming for different purposes a lot of times. Sometimes it's a kapara, but a lot of times it's a spirit that's roaming around in the world here. Okay, this is scary to talk about, but we're a lot of people here, so we're safe so far. Okay, and it's a spirit that's roaming around here, and he's being completely attacked by the mashchitim. He's being annihilated. Things of mavet, like mamish, very extremely painful things. And his only way to run, they can only punish him as long as he's dead. But if he's alive, they can't punish him, as we all know. Baruch Hashem, we're safe, right? As long as you're alive, you can't get punished by one of these malachei mavet, by these mashchitim. You understand? So what does he want to do? He wants to become quote-unquote alive. How does he become alive? By possessing someone's body. That's how it works. He goes and possesses someone's body. He tries to latch onto someone that's a lower person, someone made a chet, as we'll see. Or sometimes a person, as we say, in the wrong place at the wrong time. It can even happen in some type of situation. And a person can get possessed by such a person, and therefore, but a lot of times it's because they did something small wrong, and he's able to get a knisa. He found a little opening and he's able to get in. That's where the problem happens. You understand? So based on that, we'll see that that's the idea of the dibuk, and after that we'll move on to maybe less scary ideas.